Hope is the certainty or the expectancy that something good is going to happen. The most direct path we can take to overcoming our fears around mental illness is to leverage the power of curiosity to arrive at the place of understanding.
What is financial sobriety?
Well, first, I'm Jim Gebhardt.
Oh, I'm Matthew Grishman. That's good. We should introduce ourselves.
And this podcast is all going to be about three relationships that really, when you stop and you think about them, you don't think they go together. But it's your relationship you have with money, it's the relationship you have with people who mean the most to you, and ultimately the relationship you have with yourself.
So I might imagine that those three relationships are somewhat wrapped together. That when one gets a little out of whack, perhaps it has an effect on the others.
Stick around and you'll find out. Welcome back to the studio.
It's great to be here with you, brother.
It's been a minute.
Yeah. Well, and you and I have been spending lots of time talking about money stuff and relationship with money stuff, that it kind of feels good to take a pause here for a minute.
Absolutely. We're still in the month of May. It's Mental Health Awareness Month.
Last episode of the month of May.
As a matter of fact, if we had cameras on in the studio today, you would be seeing Mr. Grishman in none other than a mustache.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Well, our friends, the San Francisco Giants, decided that to honor Mental Health Awareness Month in May, they were going to all grow a mustache for the month of May, something that most of the world does in November with Movember Mustache Month. Since baseball is in the off season in November, I thought it was brilliant for the Giants to do that. Mike Yastrzemski, our starting right fielder for the San Francisco Giants, who has been very public and open about his own personal battles in the world of mental health and how he has overcome much of his struggles, kind of led the charge for the team and suggested it. And so working with our friends in the Giants, I felt like I wanted to grow a little mustache with them.
As the man of 1,000 looks, you can pull that off. And on June 1st, I pray it's gone.
Yes. Or who knows? Maybe he'll have friends with a full facial beard again.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we wanted to both honor and not just honor, but talk about the ongoing challenges that so many people have, whether you're a teen, whether you're a elderly person, and everybody in between.
From little kids all the way to the end. Absolutely.
It's just, when I did a little bit of homework on looking at the data around the amount of teen depression and how from 2009 to 2019, the rates have doubled.
The amount of depression within teenagers.
The amount of depression has doubled in a 10-year span from 2009 to 2019. When you look at the stats on anxiety, 1/3 of all teenagers are dealing with or suffering from anxiety.
Boy.
You then go to the far end of the spectrum, to the elderly.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by elderly? What are we?
Elderly as
like
in 80
our age?
and above.
Oh, gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
28% of the elderly live alone. And that's creating a level of isolation and loneliness. But loneliness is actually, I don't have the stats on this, but I've done enough reading on it to know that loneliness is its own pandemic. Loneliness is its own epidemic right now, with the amount of people that feel lonely in a world with 8 billion people.
Sure.
And there's all kinds of evidence that talks about the screen effect and how much time people are spending with their face in screens. And I try to have a little fun with it, particularly at my house when, maybe it's after dinner and we don't allow phones at the dinner table. And yet after dinner, perhaps we're watching a show together or we're just hanging out in the family room, and I'll look and everybody's on a screen. I'm guilty too. There are plenty of times where
you're observing.
One of the kids will say, "Oh, why don't I get my phone out so we can all be on screens together?"
Sure.
This is an issue. And we wanted to rebroadcast an episode that we did in May of 2022 from our dear friend of financial sobriety, David Woods Bartley, who you met through your journey with your TED Talk, who speaks incredibly passionately about his own struggle with mental illness and how he's been able to transform his life into what he calls mental wellness.
Yes.
And I just get the chills thinking about his story. And his journey and how he's out there advocating people talk about this.
Sure. What's really cool about all of this is I think mental health has been an issue since the beginning of human history. We've had some triggers in the last handful of years that have accelerated some mental health crisis types of issues, like with the pandemic and the loneliness that came from that and the isolation. But it's also coming at an intersection where it's becoming less taboo to talk about this stuff, because we're starting to realize we all have moments. We all have times, whether we've been diagnosed with a significant mental health crisis, a mental health disorder, or we have some situational anxiety or depression. Every human being at some point has been touched by the world of mental health, mental illness, either themselves or within family, within friends. And I'm so grateful that the world is talking about it, where it's become not only not taboo anymore, but it's become a hot topic of conversation where people are starting to feel comfortable enough in their own skin to wear it as a badge of honor, as it should be, and talk about their experience. Because talking about their experience, as we've done here in studio, I mean, much of how we started this podcast was me dealing with some of the mental demons that I've had in my past, and just being able to talk about it on this microphone with you, being able to connect with you, with Ace, with Sawyer here in studio, with our tribe at large, the therapeutic, cathartic benefits of just the human connection, talking about it. I mean, we're only as sick as our secrets, right? And for me, not talking about this stuff, keeping it to myself and putting on that happy face and walking out into public every day.
How'd that work out?
Oh, it caused me to get to a place of near implosion. So to be able to talk about this and connect with other people, it's like, you know, we all walk around with this big backpack of life on, and every time something happens, it's another 10-pound rock that goes in the backpack. And boy, if we let that backpack weigh us down, the effect that it has on our mental health is massive. And every time you and I sit down and talk about it, it's like one more rock comes out of the backpack, and I just feel that much freer, that much lighter. And that, having that conversation with David in studio, 2 whole episodes on it, was one of the most freeing conversations we've ever had, one of the most healing conversations we've ever had here in studio.
Well, and that's exactly why we're going to bring it back into the forefront and give everybody another opportunity, because life changes.
Yes.
Life changes rapidly.
Sure.
And, you know, I really treasure the conversation we had with him. And then I'm incredibly impressed that public figures like Simone Biles and Michael Phelps and other,
Mike
Hollywood,
Yastrzemski.
Mike Yastrzemski, and other athletes and other very famous people that have come forward and shared their struggles and openly talked about how they've been suicidal or near suicidal, and how Simone, she stepped out of the Olympics, for crying out loud, because the stress of it was too much.
Sure.
When people lead by example doing that, it helps the little people like you and me that are just going through everyday ordinary life, that nobody knows us from the man on the moon, but we've got our struggles.
Absolutely.
Right? And how do you deal with that? Not trying to put depression or anxiety on a different pedestal than other types of mental illness. It all goes into that same category. And I just think it's a beautiful story that we're going to hear from David.
Absolutely. One of the questions we often get when we bring up this topic, and we had David in studio last time, is, well, wait a minute, you guys are doing a show called Financial Sobriety. What does that have to do with mental health, finances, and mental health? And I think what's really important... I think
we're going to give them 162 episodes to listen to.
Exactly. Well, remember, this show is all about being super intentional in these 3 somewhat complicated relationships that we have, right? And when we talk about mental health, there's a direct connection to that relationship with self and the story that we tell ourselves and what's going on in our minds. And when that relationship struggles, it has a profound effect on the other complicated relationships in life, be it that relationship we have with our people and that relationship that we have with money. And so what we're trying to encourage people to do through this conversation in strengthening that relationship with self, healing that relationship with self, putting some energy and effort and intentionality on mental health, is giving yourself permission to use those financial resources, that relationship with money, and connect the dots and invest in yourself. You are your most valuable investment. So let's give ourselves a little bit of permission to use those financial resources to take exquisite care
whether
of
it's
our mental
therapy,
health.
whether it's physical
Absolutely.
exercise, whether it's medical services that aren't being covered by your insurance company. I mean, we have a number of friends of clients right now that they're getting their own medical testing and procedures done that are not being covered by insurance, and they've struggled.
They're going down the private route.
They're going down the private route. They've struggled with the decision around it, and I get a little bit impassioned at the conversation because I'm like, what's the money for?
Sure. The best.
If you're not here, then the money doesn't have a purpose. So why don't we take care of ourselves and use the money to support the very best health you can possibly have?
Yes.
I have a friend who, for the last year, has been going to Argentina to have stem cell therapy on his knees. He's 80 years old, and I just recently saw a picture of the before and after. He has the knees of a 35-year-old now.
Attaboy.
It is unbelievable when you see the before and afters.
So he could do like 1,000 jumping jacks now.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Instead of 562. So it's just, thank you for connecting the dots on how do we connect money with the meaning behind what we're talking about here today.
You're welcome.
Because I really want people to hear that. I really want people to understand if you're struggling mentally, physically, emotionally,
your health,
your health
relationship
is
with
suffering.
you. Yeah.
Go spend the money.
Invest in you.
Invest in you to go get better. Go figure out what you need and go do it.
We've always said one of the greatest secrets is that you are your most valuable investment. The secret to creating wealth is to invest in yourself to become the very best version of you that you can create so that you can step out into the world and make a maximum contribution to your tribe and your community. That is what we've learned from the most exquisite wealth creators you and I have surrounded ourselves with.
I heard an interesting definition of the word competition versus ambition.
Okay.
Competition is an outward compete with others.
Okay.
Ambition is about being the very best version of yourself you can be.
Okay.
And I loved it.
Beautiful. Let's be ambitious and invest in ourselves.
So ways you can connect with us are through our website at yourfinancialsobriety.com. By all means, give us a call at 877-283-9150. And with that,
here comes David Woods Bartley.
David, welcome in, my friend.
Men, thank you so much. And for the listeners who don't have the pleasure to be with Matthew and Jim, and it is an incredible energy that is here. So
we pump that in.
Yeah, it's in the air. It's the happy gas.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, David Woods Bartley, you're becoming an incredible friend, brother. I'm so grateful you're here today. David is on a mission. And he is out there in this world to transform mental illness from a disabling condition to a heroic cause, from mental hellness to mental wellness.
I love that.
That is awesome. Awesome. David, welcome in.
Well, thank you again for having me. And before I forget, this whole concept of empathy, my family is incredibly important to me, just like yours is, and I would imagine yours as well. And my sister-in-law, Stacy, and I bring an immediate smile because Stacy has a big personality and big hair and everything else. And she and my beloved brother, Tom, do a lot of great work in relationships. And Stacy and I were talking about this whole concept of empathy. And most of the time, even I think it's gender neutral that, we want to be empathetic and we'll say, I feel you. But Sis looked at me and she said, you know what? I think that the best way to express empathy is I'm feeling with you. Mm-hmm. And I think it's such a slight difference. And in my world, talking about mental illness and with a particular emphasis on suicide, is there's a beautiful saying that says shame can't survive empathy. And most of us who are in that difficult place, Matthew, that you had described in terms of being overwhelmed with the fight with the monster, as I call it, we are filled with shame.
Yeah.
And so one moment, and I love the distinction that you had between sympathy and empathy, one little drop of empathy makes an enormous difference.
Oh, absolutely. We've got a lot to unpack and talk about here today with you. We just had another good friend of ours in studio, Julia Nicholson, who was with us on stage.
Superstar.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of going through her story and her experiences, talking about all the its in life, and really turning the focus in the vein of financial sobriety, right? We talk about these three very complex relationships every human has. We have this relationship with money, relationship with people, relationship with self. And they're all interconnected with one another. When one gets a little out of whack, it's going to have a spillover effect into those other relationships. Julia did a beautiful job with putting the focus on that relationship with self and being able to manage some of these its in life that are inevitable, and how we integrate those to become a more resilient person, which allows us then to go give what it is our people really need from us, which is our presence, which is our empathy. And what we really want to have you here in studio to help with today is to continue that conversation through your lens, through your experiences, on how the concept of identifying areas of self-care and then transitioning this, knowing how many people are hurting out there today, what you've learned on your journey, and how you can go be connecting with people, this idea of just sitting down with somebody at times could be a game changer. It could mean the difference between life and death. So taking this episode and making it all about that relationship we have with others, starting from that relationship with self and being able to go out into the world and show up best version of ourselves. Before we get into that, very important question. What are you grateful for today?
And I was thinking about this, without the kind of the pat answer of, oh, yeah, I have a long list. And I do. But most recently, I'm grateful for this new opportunity that has been on my bucket list for a long time to have a chance to work with the Army. And the reason that's important to me is, so I have 3 older brothers. I'm the baby, the favorite.
Of course.
Exactly. So my eldest brother, who I call the general because he's a 2-star general. And he's in the Army vernacular, they call him a Mustang. So in other words, he enlisted way back in 1970, worked his way ultimately to West Point, graduated from West Point, and then worked his way up to be a 2-star. And he's the single most important male figure in my life. And he's 11 years older, so he's more like a dad than he is a brother. And so I always wanted to serve. I wanted to go to West Point. I didn't have the grades, and there were other things. Really, if I look back now, it was my fight with the monster that I don't think I would have been an effective officer. So, but the way things have worked now, just recently, I had a video call with a 3-star general, and yesterday I had a 90-minute call with a 2-star general, and there's another call most likely this week with another 2-star general, because the Army has this horrific problem, suicide. And the modern day leadership in the Army now is really changing. They're really following the lead of my brother in terms of they've become curious, interestingly, about empathy. And it was such an amazing conversation with Major General Brian Eifler, who is the commander of the U.S. Army Alaska, that he just says, David, I have to understand this. I have to, we have to do this. And really the whole conversation was about connection. That I said, General, in my opinion, my tagline is connection creates hope and hope saves lives. The Army has in their effort to overcome this, they have a slogan that they say, okay, connect to protect. And one of the things I said to the general is, I said, sir, this is good, but if you look at it, it's touting connection as the end game. And it's not. Hope is the end game. And I said, sir, you can actually use hope as a weapon. Like, hope is like a unicorn, and it's like puppies and rainbows, but don't discount like the tenacity and the relentlessness and the impact of hope as ordnance, like a laser-guided smart bomb.
Yeah.
Because it obliterates all that. But hope has to be activated, and it's activated by way of connection. And later on, if you want, there's an extraordinary, what do we call it? An experiment that was actually done in the 50s that, from an empirical perspective, measures the impact of hope by way of a rat, believe it or not. So if you ever want me to tell the story, just let me know.
This sounds like
I guess
an
this
appropriate
would
time.
be
I
a
was
great
going to
segue.
say.
So
Hey, David, why don't you tell us a story about hope and the rat?
there we go. Thank you so much. I never thought of that. So, and this was done in the 50s.
Wow.
And the first time that I heard about this, and I don't know how I was introduced to it.
Back in the days of Suck It Up Buttercup.
Exactly.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, this can't be real. And I have quadruple plus checked it. And then there's even one source where he had the original like handwritten notes. So here's what happened. So as a background, rats are known as really good swimmers, especially domestic rats. So what this researcher did is take a rat, put it in a bucket of water, and time how long could a rat swim, tread water before it was about to drown. And on average, it was about 15 minutes. So right before the rat drowned, the researcher would take the rat out of the water, give him a chance to dry himself off, just collect his breath, catch his breath, and then put him back in the water.
Oh, boy.
So what would you think, men? 15 minutes the first time, taken out of the water and put back in. How long do you think on that second time that the rat could swim?
I don't
I'd
think
go
I'd
less.
I would go a little bit lesser,
Maybe
Right.
10.
10 to 12.
Right. No, that's a good guess. But the answer is 60 hours.
Huh.
60 hours. So you'd think, wait a second. 15 minutes.
40 times more.
I think it's 240 times more.
Cool. No, I didn't do my math
Yeah, you didn't
exercises
convert
this
from
morning.
minutes to hours.
It's okay.
Well, I
because-
left the decimal in the wrong.
Exactly.
But it really doesn't matter because you're in finance, so math.
Nah,
No,
Yeah,
numbers
nothing
and
at all.
math
Yeah,
are meaningless.
whatever.
Who needs
That's
that? We got a
kinda stupid.
podcast. We don't need
Exactly.
numbers.
That's
Exactly.
what Excel's for.
So if you think about that, and there's one definition of hope which I think perfectly applies here. Hope is the certainty or the expectancy that something good is going to happen. So the rat has this experience that somebody's going to save them. And they can go 60 hours. There's only been one person, and she was a brat. So that's the impact of hope. That's why hope, this thing that has to be activated, is the answer to the problem.
So hope was activated for the rat when he was rescued and dried off and saved.
Correct.
Hope was activated, put back in the water, and now there's an expectation that somebody's going to eventually save me. And that alone extended the rat's ability to tread water from 15 minutes to 60 hours.
Exactly. So hope floats. I know.
That's amazing.
I had to.
The
whole thing is.
and
is
to think-
They
incredible.
should make a movie called Hope Floats.
I know.
Right. But to think that empirical data has been around for 70 years
Right.
and we still all don't know that story,
You're right.
right? I mean,
It's too profitable to allow out. We've got to keep that under wraps because as long as we don't have hope out there, we've got lots of stuff we can sell you and make lots of money on to manufacture hope in a different kind of way.
and I'm welcoming Saul the Skeptic into the studio today. It's been a while since you've been here, pal.
Well, he's back. He's fresh off an East Coast trip and
Yeah.
lots of skepticism here.
Sure. So you packed the overnight bag with all your skepticism, and it's so nice to see you.
Absolutely.
You can leave now.
Well,
No.
it's a good day to bring the skeptic into the
Yeah,
room because hope
absolutely.
is here.
Right.
Right?
And you think the more I dwell on this, and sometimes I'll be honest with you that I second guess what I do. Because when I talk about suicide and mental health, in a nutshell, I wrap it in animal stories, or in this case, the story of a rat, which is new. So I was married to a wonderful woman who is still a really close friend, and we ran this very large animal sanctuary that was home to as many as 100 animals. And we did no adoptions because we wanted the ones that were old and sick and disabled and the throwaways. So that all came to a crashing end, which is a different story. But there's an essential aspect in that about a connection that was made in the most unlikely of places. But now, life, however we define it, I'm working out or I'm in the car or I'm in the presence with three amazing men and a story will pop in my head, like the one used in the TED Talk about Murphy. I'm like, wow, that works. And what I've noticed is it gives, because of the intensity of the subject, especially around suicide, a story, especially an animal story, gives people safe proximity to the subject, and then they're all parables. It's not like, oh my gosh, look at the little cute bunny. No, there is a parable. There is a specific teaching point, just like the one with Murphy. And the net, as a dear friend of mine says, is all about hope. Like, hope will win the day. And I think we're stepping over it. And it was interesting with the conversation with General Eiffel yesterday. He's like, yeah, I think the Army's doing great stuff, but it needs to add these other things. And part of it is I spend about half my talks really talking about the problem first.
Yeah.
Because if we jump right to the solution, like I would imagine in the souls who benefit being in your presence and to untangle the complexity of their financial lives, You first have to understand what the problem is. Where are they at?
Absolutely.
Before you can say, hey, let's go ahead and go into bonds, whatever that is.
Yep.
Well, and I don't know if we've really talked about this on our show, but there is such a deep human element to the conversation around money, right? We should write a book on that.
Absolutely. I'll make a note.
Or a podcast.
That too. The analogy that we use is we have to start at the surface level. We have to start at the skin, right? And if we go straight to bone,
They're out.
Right.
they're gone.
Right.
It's just too fast, too much. They can't handle it. Much in the same way, if you go, here's the solution to suicide, you can't do that with an audience on this topic because you've got to, warm them up to what the problem is. And I'm thrilled to hear that organizations as big and powerful as the Army are open to change in this area, given the pandemic that exists with suicide in the military. That's amazing.
I want to stay on this idea that you've kicked off here with us, on this idea of creating hope, of triggering hope, of instigating hope, like what was done in the rat experiment. It requires humans to do something. And we have this idea that we've teed up already today, this concept of empathy that seems to be on life support. It doesn't seem to exist very frequently in the world today. It's not in the kind of abundance that we would hope that it's in today. So I think if we can start by just diving into that a little bit and trying to understand why empathy is on life support, why we're not seeing it as much, what the challenge is, and what the ultimate paradox is to how empathy is the solution to the problem, right? The problem that empathy is not in existence today, the actual solution is empathy in and of itself. And I want to start there and talk about what we're seeing in the world today and why is it so hard, in your experience, David, for somebody to be able to just sit down and be with somebody. You've shared this, that literally saving a life could be as simple as just sitting down, yet it seems like everywhere I look, I don't know about you, brother, people are having a hard time finding the capacity to do that.
And I think, if I may, I would go so far as to say that empathy is a lot like hope in the sense it has to be activated. It's like respect, too. Respect doesn't just, you don't walk into a room necessarily and have an experience of respect. And here is the path. It's curiosity. So I think what's happening is we, every single one of us, to whatever degree, at the extreme, the souls that find themselves in the place of wanting to end their life and those who have some level of upset. And there's an amazing stat. I guess it's amazing in the sense that it really paints this a truly authentic picture that 70% of the adults in the United States have had at least one experience of significant trauma. So we're walking around not broken, injured, wounded, like we're hurt. So I think what happens is because we, especially now, and to the extent that COVID has really exacerbated, because we're isolated, it's brought the pain to the level, we want to talk about ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we're not pausing to ask questions. Really, so one of the things that I say in regards to mental illness is the most direct path we can take to overcoming our fear, and let's say disconnection, around mental illness is to leverage the power of curiosity to create the space of understanding.
Ooh, could you repeat that, please?
I could. Thank you. That the most direct path we can take to overcoming our fears around mental illness is to leverage the power of curiosity to arrive at the place of understanding. Because the reality is, in my opinion, the opposite of fear is not calm. The opposite of fear is understanding. The more we understand, the less we fear. So, quick, short version of a longer story about one of the animals. We had a beautiful pond in the back, and we had geese. On this particular day, a goose named Adia, A-D-I-A, which is Swahili for beautiful, because he was an African goose, not that bright white swan-like. He had all these beautiful combinations of browns and blacks and everything else. So I put him on the cusp of the pond in the front of everything that is ideal for a goose. But instead of going into that, he jumped into the small bathtub-sized water trough that was on the edge of the pond for the other animals to drink out of. We bring people to the cusp of resources, financial, mental health, whatever they are, and yet instead of that, they jump into the small bathtub-sized water trough of their suffering, and it makes no sense. Like, what up, dude? So I thought, well, maybe he's stressed. Kind of a different environment, most likely. Take him out, put him back on that spot, he jumps back in. Okay? Kind of starting to annoy me a little bit. I don't understand your behavior. We do this like 10 times, and I've moved along the spectrum of, that's odd. You're annoying. I don't like you. It just makes no sense. So
Yep.
I get real worked up. Dee, my former beloved, comes and looks at the situation, goes and makes a call to the rescue organization and comes back and says, honey, guess what I found out? I'm like, what? Found out that Adia had lived his whole life in the small confines of somebody's filthy backyard, and the only water that this goose had ever seen was that filled up about half of a small little kiddie pool. What?
No wonder.
What an idiot I am. And here's the beautiful thing when we understand somebody.
Yeah.
In that moment, a solution came. I'm like, just get a second water trough. But that solution is not available when I misunderstand
Right.
another sentient being.
Right.
And you didn't have the curiosity at that point.
Exactly.
D is who brought you the solution, which triggered a little bit of curiosity, which brought some understanding to the solution.
Right. So we bring somebody to the edge of all these resources. Well, we don't know their story. Everybody has a story. The great sage, Mr. Rogers, said, quite frankly, there's no one you can't learn to love once you know their story.
Right.
There's no one you can't learn to understand once you know their story. So I sat down. Okay, this is an amazing experience. Like I said, you know what? Okay, my man, if he wants to stay in a water trough, God love you. So I'm looking at the other geese, which interestingly were Mercy and Grace, and then Dave, who was a duck, who thought he was a goose. So I'm sitting down just taking all this in this, because of Deanna, this energy of acceptance, this energy of understanding, which literally exudes from us. 5 minutes later, Adia jumps up out of the water trough, walks around my back, sits down right next to me, and then cocks his head and looks up at me.
Wow.
I'm just like, I want him to hug me. Please forgive me for my ignorance. 5 minutes after that, he stands up, walks to the same place, to the edge, looks out at Mercy, Grace, and Dave, looks at the water trough, turns around and looks at me, then eyes front, swims into the pond.
That's awesome.
When a soul is misunderstood, has not been given the opportunity to tell their story, to give air to their thoughts, in the words of the Lady Bird Johnson says, an opportunity to hurt out loud, they're disconnected. They're never going to move forward. But once we understand their story, we give them a chance to be understood and connected. At least there's a likelihood that they're going to move in to experience what they were entitled to be. Mental health is not a privilege, it's a right. It is as inalienable right as freedom is. And I love the imagery and the reality that Adia swam into the presence of Mercy and Grace.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You have me on bated breath as you tell that beautiful story. I am so curious, as I'm sure we all are, on your story and how did you get on this path to make mental wellness a mental wellness?
Thank you for the question. So I have battled the monster. I'm 58 years old. I've battled the monster since I was 11 years old. And one of the things that I've learned,
Does this monster have a name?
You know, it doesn't.
It doesn't. It's just the monster.
Yeah, that's a good question.
What does the monster feel like?
Oh, well, I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
One of the pups, a Boston Terrier, there's only two ingredients in a Boston. It's 51% gas and 49% enthusiasm. Right? So it is.
My wife might say the same thing about me.
I thought so. One of the pups that came to the sanctuary was named Winston. Now, again, Bostons are the epitome of annoying exuberance and joy. But when Winnie came, I thought he was dead. But then I watched his chest expand and contract. And I put him down, and his ears were low, eyes barely open, chin so low that when he was able to walk, his chin dragged on the carpet. I'm like, why is he the opposite? I've had 40 Bostons. I've never seen a Boston like this. And what we found out is that some person had decided to use Winston as a bait dog in a dogfighting ring. And it's an awful story that I use with great intention because it's the best example that I can share in response to what does it feel like. It's like that. It's like having the incredibly terrible pain of a toothache, of a migraine, coupled with the saddest experience you've ever had in your life, that period of sadness where you feel like you're never going to be happy again.
Yeah.
mixed in with acute self-hatred and an experience of fatigue where not only can you not keep your eyes open, you can't open your eyes. And then you fashion all that together like a coat, but dip it in water, this heavy like parka coat, dip it in water and then wear it. Put lead in the pockets and then put your hands behind your back and allow the monster to handcuff you and says, okay, man, bring it.
So it's safe to say that when the monster's got its grip on you, you get lost inside of you with a feeling of such incredible sadness, despair, fear, anxiety. I mean, all these words we've heard to describe, that's what's going on with you when you're in the grips of the monster.
Exactly. And there's, you can imagine this Winston in the midst of not just one fighting dog, but a whole combination, that ultimately what happened is this, all he could do is retreat into a fetal position.
Yeah.
And hope and pray. And what I say is people don't die from schizophrenia and bipolar and depression. They die from hopelessness. They do. But the beautiful thing is people do not kill themselves when they're hopeful. Never. They never do that. They never kill themselves when they have hope. Never.
So as you describe this experience with Winston, with your goose, who I'm already forgetting her name. Adia. Thank you. You yourself have been gripped by this monster, yet you've gotten to experience Adia and Winston as they're gripped by their monster. What has that done for you with dealing with the monster yourself in being present for these other beings? I mean, how were you able to put your own stuff aside and be there for these animals? And what did that do for you?
And it really, brother, it goes back, and it's kind of, I think, an overused word, and people kind of just put it to the shelf and say, oh, yeah, I've heard that. But it really is self-care. And it is that for me to be well, and let me just make a quick tangent. I still have terrible days. I still have days of thinking about killing myself. There are days that the monster is just owns me.
Raging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're days. They're not weeks. They're not months. They're not years, and that's a huge distinction.
Sure.
So self-care, you could say self-love, but I think when we use those terms, people dismiss them as too new agey and touchy-feely and everything else. So let's just put it that it's a plan of attendance to your own needs. And it is in the triangle that you talk about. For me, it's body, mind, and again, in spirit, however you define that. So it's sleep, diet, exercise, time outside, therapy, psychiatry, peer support, which I think is the single most important thing, because hope is hearing other people's experiences. Like, wow, you sit in the presence of someone and you realize that everything I'm thinking and feeling is normal. And then there is whatever your own spiritual practice is, it doesn't mean. I mean, for me, it was running the sanctuary for a great many years, and then a sense of purpose. So actually, to clarify, the sanctuary no longer exists, but life has given me the opportunity to leverage the experience to honor Deanna, to honor those animal beings, and then endeavor, because my life was saved, to give back. So part of the answer to the question is every time, this included, that I get to share my story, one additional layer of shame gets taken off. And I'm like, because I tell my story, and you three have not ended this session, because there is like something as the mouthpiece, something that I'm saying is of value. And for a person that still to this day struggles with that I am of value, this is a blessing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a gift beyond words.
Just sharing your story. I mean, this is kind of where I'm going with this, and I'm so glad you're sharing where this comes from through self-care, because one of the biggest pieces you shared with us in this talk of self-care is being able to give to others, being able to somehow use your story, use your experiences as a way to be of service to others. It's almost like you've introduced us to this paradox of how you at times are dealing with your own monster, and at the times that monster has a grip on you, how sometimes the best way to handle that at that time to get out of your own head is to get into somebody else's heart.
Exactly. You're exactly right. And there's where it's an interesting thing. So if you look at self-care, all these different components like a vehicle.
Right.
It has to have fuel, it's connection. And the interesting thing about self-care is I'm sorry. The interesting thing about connection is I don't think there's any more pure form of reciprocity. And so thus, it is something that I can do for the benefit of someone else. But for me, it's also something, it's a tenet of my self-care. So in other words, people will ask me at the end of a talk and say, okay, on your tough days, what do you do? And I said, the single most important thing that I do, the first thing is I got to go make connection.
Hey, Tribe, thanks for being here with us today with David Woods Bartley. We're going to push pause here. We had such a great conversation with him that we want to give you a minute to digest where we've been, because where we're going to go gets even deeper. So stick with us. We're going to be right back. Coming tomorrow is the second part of our conversation with our dear friend David Woods Bartley.
If you like what you heard, leave us a review and be sure to subscribe. And check out our website, yourfinancialsobriety.com. Thanks again for listening today. Here to help you find more clarity, confidence, and capability along your journey into financial sobriety. I'm Matthew Grishman.
And I'm Jim Gebhardt.
Be intentional with your money.
Jim Gebhardt is a registered representative of and securities offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC, member SIPC. Jim Gebhardt and Matthew Grishman are investment advisor representatives of Gebhardt Group Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Brokers International Financial Services, LLC, and Gebhardt Group Incorporated are not affiliated. The opinions in this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or investment recommendations. To determine which investments or financial advice may be appropriate for you, consult a financial advisor prior to investing. Any reference to market performance is based on historical information, and there is no expressed or implied guarantee of future performance. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of Brokers International Financial Services, LLC. The topics discussed and opinions given are not intended to address the specific needs of any listener. Gebhardt Group Incorporated does not offer legal or tax advice. Listeners are encouraged to discuss their financial needs with the appropriate professional regarding your individual circumstance.